SMU 11-1 in 2024. How do they follow it up in this year's regular season? Our newest host here at the network, Grayson Singleton of Locked On SMU, is here to discuss that very thing. So here's how it goes down, Grayson. I give you my record prediction, and you, as the local expert on SMU, tell me, the national discusser person guy, how much of a fool I am. That's kind of how this game usually gets played. So we'll keep playing it that way. SMU's schedule is so much tougher than it was last year. And I was an advocate of them getting into the playoff. I will forever stand by that. I don't know how they're going to get back to the playoff this year because, man, you got two Big 12 opponents, which I think they should have. I want everyone to have 10 Power 4 non-conference or 10 Power 4 games on their schedule, whether that's 2 non-conference or 9 conference games and whatever. Get 10 on there. This is a tough schedule. You've got Miami, you go at Clemson, Syracuse is on there, TCU and Baylor for the in-state non-conference matchups. I do like SMU. I like Rhett Lashlee. I like what they have coming back. I sit at 9-3 for a team that has a win total of 8.5. Do you think that is a fair prediction for the Mustangs?
I think it's fair. I don't think you're way off base with it, but I will say I would give them that 10th win. And the schedule shapes up pretty decently for them in a couple of regards. Number one, they get a scheduling break with the fact that they don't have to go to Syracuse, New York. I think that's a really big thing, that they get that Syracuse game at home. The other scheduling break I think that they get is coming off of those back-to-back weeks on the East Coast when they play at Clemson and then at Wake Forest. They get Miami on the Hilltop in Dallas. So the fact that you don't have to go to Clemson and to Miami in the same season, I think shakes out well for you. Also, the back end of that schedule is really favorable for SMU. You're at Boston College. We don't expect much from the Eagles this year. Then you're home for Louisville. Could be interesting. Miller Moss coming over from USC certainly makes that intriguing. And then you're at Cal, who could very well be competing for the worst team in the conference.
Oh, hey, be nice to the Bears.
I mean, they lost their quarterback, and then Fernando Mendoza went to Indiana, and then they lost their best player, Jaden Knott, the running back that went to Oklahoma. So there's not really a whole lot coming back for a team in terms of star power, and for a team that wasn't really good last year anyway. The two Big 12 teams on the schedule, I think SMU can handle. They get the better of the two, who I think is Baylor. They get them at home as well. So the way the schedule just plays out on paper, I do see SMU getting back to double-digit wins. Now, do they lose both of those games to Clemson and Miami? Maybe. But there's not another game on that schedule that I look at and say, I would expect SMU to lose that game.
I wouldn't either in ACC play. I think at Clemson is a loss because I am bullish on the Tigers this year. I haven't made my preseason national championship pick. Clemson is not going to be outside the top 3. I mean, Clemson, Penn State would probably be my top 2 going into the year. I don't know who I'll pick to win the title going into this season.
You like Drew Aller a lot, don't you?
Well, I just like the fact that they have arguably the best coordinator tandem in the country. They took Jim Knowles from Ohio State. They have most of their team coming back. They were one drive from going to the national championship game. I think they're pretty good. Hot take.
Yeah.
Hot take.
They're pretty good. They're pretty good. I don't know if I like the quarterback situation, though, but we get off topic.
Yeah, but there's no quarterback situation in college football I really know anything about. There are barely any. Kevin Jennings at SMU is one of them. That's one of the reasons I like the Mustangs, because this is a pretty difficult schedule. I'm glad you brought up the back 5 games, though, because this is a slate where you've got your 2 toughest opponents at home and 3 winnable games on the road. Now, going to Cal, I know a lot of people are down on Cal. And for our YouTube audience, I'll throw up my preseason ACC power rankings. Some people think I have Cal slotted too high at number 10. The reason I put them in that position is through all the years, and this is not exactly year 2 or 3 for Justin Wilcox, I believe it's year 9, he just finds a way to finish right smack dab in the middle. And I've got him just below the middle because they did lose a pretty good amount. I know people are, looking at him and saying, man, they could be towards the bottom of the conference this year. All they lost in the turnover. And I've just seen it too many times. He's just so established to be in that 5 to 6 win range. Their preseason win total is 5.5. That's about what it should be. Even though they are in that spot, Grayson, that last regular season game for SMU at Cal, I'm just telling you, weird things happen in Berkeley. They just ask Miami
I was
last
going to
year.
say, ask Miami last year.
Ask Auburn the year before. Cal, of course, went into Auburn and won, different teams. But when you have a cross country trip, in this New World ACC or the Big to any conference, anytime you're going 3 time zones backwards or forward, I don't care. I raise my hand and go, I think that could get really sneakily difficult. I don't know what Cal will be at that point. I think I have a good idea about SMU, but like my initial instinct off the bat was to pick SMU under 8.5, but then I thought, no, I got to stick with my principles of when you return head coach, offensive coordinator, quarterback, I like you because that's a rarity in college football.
Well, keep this in mind, too. They also returned the defensive coordinator. And when you are in a situation like SMU where you pop in a year, generally some of those bigger schools come calling for your coordinators, and then you're having to replace them. The fact that you have head coach and both coordinators back, along with your quarterback, like you just stated, bodes very, very well. I want to back up for a second to that graphic that you just put up. Did you have SMU projected at 5?
I do. I do.
Okay, explain that, because behind Louisville and behind Georgia Tech, which I think Georgia Tech's a very interesting team in the ACC. But how do you have them falling so far?
So Georgia Tech is my favorite Power 4 conference dark horse to win a championship. And the reason is they have an incredibly veteran quarterback. They have a staff that I trust. They have a roster that is pretty darn good. And they have a very clear identity. And they were a good team last year. Not great, but they took the SEC champs on their home field to 8 overtimes. And that's not nothing. And I think that Georgia Tech has got the ability to finish in the top half of, or the top third, rather, of the conference this year. Louisville has one of the most underrated coaches in the country in Jeff Brom. I've always been a Miller Moss fan. Did not think that he was the problem at USC. I think he was kind of a scapegoat for a situation that had some other underlying issues. But you look at Jeff Brom's track record with quarterbacks, it's very good. And Louisville last year was a good team. It's not that I'm down on SMU. I just don't think they're going to automatically get to double-digit wins the way they did a season ago. I think they got a little bit of a scheduling break, to be sure. They also, as you likely remember, Grayson, you have 50-50 games that can go either way. I don't know how they won that Duke game, man. I really don't. Like, that was one that I looked at and went, boy, I don't know how you went. Now, BYU, I felt like they should have won by more, and that was just a weird, crazy game, and I give them credit for that. But I think that SMU's record was not inflated enough to the point where I think they shouldn't have been in the college football playoff, because I want results to matter above all else in the regular season. But I don't think there's not a big gap there in this graphic. Like, I think my biggest cutoff line, frankly, is from Duke to Syracuse, because Syracuse doesn't have Kyle McCord. I do think Steve Angeli can be pretty solid for them, but that's kind of like the line between 1 through Clemson, I think, is head and shoulders above everybody else on paper going into this year. But
I would agree with that.
There's a bigger gap to me between my 6 and 7 teams, Duke and Syracuse, than Georgia Tech and SMU 4 and 5. I just like what the Yellow Jackets did, and I didn't feel like they yet popped. Whereas last year, I think a lot of things really went right for SMU.
I can agree with that too. And a lot of times those 50-50 games don't get duplicated. I do get that logic. Here's the thing, though. I'm putting a lot of stock when it comes to SMU in the fact that Kevin Jennings this year is coming into the season as the unquestioned starter. Because remember, he took over from Preston Stone early in the season. Which
I didn't understand at first. I was so bewildered. I was like, this Stone was good. What do we do? And then I watched Jennings a little. I'm like, oh, okay, I see what we're doing here.
And then obviously Stone had to transfer out, ends up at Northwestern. But I think the fact that Kevin Jennings is going through an entire offseason as the unquestioned QB1 bodes well for him. And, obviously he's got to cut down the turnovers. I think there is progression that he can make in terms of processing information and whatnot. But going through the entire offseason as the dude that the coaches are paying the most attention to and giving you the most feedback, I think will bode well for him making those progressions that he seems like he needs to make. Even though Georgia Tech, I think, is interesting, we have to keep in mind about Georgia Tech. They lost their number 1 wide receiver last year in Eric Singleton. He went
True. The Rivers guy they brought in from FIU is at the very least interesting. I don't know if he's as good as Singleton, but the other reason, like, I hear that concern. My counterpoint is that Georgia Tech is not predicated on a passing game.
That is true. That is true. And by the way, neither is the success of their quarterback either. Haynes King is a pretty interesting kind of character because we know he's a solid quarterback. His raw numbers look pretty good. But is there a moment that you can really look back at Haynes King and be like, "Yep, that defines Haynes King," and I don't see that. And so
it was almost the Georgia game.
It was almost the Georgia game.
Almost.
But the operative word here is almost.
This is true.
So that's why I don't think Georgia Tech is better than an SMU team. For SMU, I think here's what you have to look at over the course of everything. 2 edge rushers coming back that are excellent. The wide receiver room is slated to be pretty good. Phil Steele had the wide receiver room as the second best wide receiver room in the ACC in his preseason poll.
I imagine behind Clemson.
Yes. Kevin Jennings coming back. The backfield is going to be interesting, I think, because you have to replace Brashard Smith, and it looks like so far that outside of redshirt freshman Derek McFall, they might be going with some sort of a committee approach. But the offensive line is still intact, and it will be really good. And I think the defense that, remember, held its opponents 44 yards below their season averages when they played SMU, I think that translates. Maybe not to 44 yards, but I think something like that, some approximation of it, translates into 2025.
Real quick before I let you go, Grayson, and this has been great stuff as I expected, but the 2 Big 12 teams, TCU and Baylor, in-state matchups, I like it. Regional, non-conference battles, I'm totally here for it. I'm predicting SMU to split those 2 games. What do they need to do to go 2-0 against 2 teams that should be top half of the Big 12?
Play good defense. I think if they play good defense, especially if they get after the passer in both of those games against Sawyer Robinson and John Hoover, I think they'll be just fine. Because even
Josh Hoover.
Josh Hoover. Yes. Yeah. Thanks for the correction. But those 2, they're good quarterbacks. But are they spectacular? I don't think so. So they're good. No, don't get me wrong.
You're talking to one of the biggest Josh Hoover fans in college football, man. I'm look. Robertson, I'm with you. Like, solid, good, capable. You could have a good season with him as we saw last year. I'm a Josh Hoover stan.
That's interesting to me because he hasn't blown me away yet, but he is still a good quarterback. So I think if they get after those 2 now, especially against TCU, because that game's in Fort Worth and not in Dallas where it was last year. But I think if they get after the passer in both those games, they should come out of those games 2-0. By the way, I love what you said at the top of this whole thing. I love 10 Power 4 games. I can't stand the way teams schedule.
It's awful.
Look, I'll give you one. I'll give you one of those games. And
yes.
For SMU, they've got Texas A&M Commerce on the schedule. They also have Missouri State. Missouri State's a feisty FCS team, so I'm not going to dock you too much for that. But I love 10 Power 4 games.
Yes.
I love it. I'm glad I found somebody who agrees with me on that.
Oh, trust me.
It drives me nuts because I live in SEC country. My day job is covering the Oklahoma Sooners. Why in the hell do you have a random game in the middle of October against Maine? That makes no damn sense.
A potential new co-host here on Locked On College Football, Grayson Singleton, who sees the world the way that it should be seen.